Welcome back to Art Massacre. This week I draw a tribute to Batman the Animated Series. Decided to tackle drawing a bunch of the fun villains. Going into the drawing, I didn't know what I was going to draw, so I drew Cyclops. Wussy Cyclops. And it was just a warm-up thing. I had taken 2 days off of drawing and just played Civilization. This is where I landed on drawing Batman stuff. Actually, it was just going to be Harley, and then I was like, well, if you're going to draw Harley Quinn, then you have to draw Mr. J as well. So, I sketched up the Joker. And as that went on, I was like, well, that's great, but, who I really want to draw is Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze is the shit. And once Mr. Freeze was started, it was like, well, this is going to be a thing now, so I'm going to have to draw a bunch of other Batman villains. And it became about who did I really want to see in the lineup. There's so many good ones, but I only have so much space. Like, I would have loved to have drawn the Riddler or Two-Face or something like that, but I just really didn't have enough room. You'll see that I redraw each drawing several times. They're all just my loose framework, and I'm just kind of working out some of the problems here. See, with the Penguin, I did a little different method where I did a shape, which I used as like a shadow for him of where he'll fit into. Did it with Ventriloquist and Scarface as well. I asked my friends online who else I should fit on the drawing, and it's overwhelmingly more women. Too much of a sausage party. So I added the two other great female villains. So that's the thing that kind of bums me out, is if I do a version 2 of this with the other bad guys that I couldn't fit on there, all the good female villains are taken. I mean, I think there's a few others, like the Phantasm and who else? I can't even think of anybody else on the top of my head. But it's going to make it a little more difficult to balance it out with genders. Over the course of the series, the designs for the character changed pretty dramatically for a lot of the characters. But I went for a version of their look from when the show first came out. So Catwoman has her original costume from the cartoon. Same with Mr. Freeze. I mean, there's slight variations that I wanted to make to each one of them to fit kind of my style, I guess. If I'd have to draw them a bunch. Like Mr. Freeze has a joint that he wouldn't have where his rib cage is. On the cartoon design, it's just a flat surface there. This whole chest piece. So I did little variations, like the original design for Man-Bat doesn't have a mohawk, but he does in a later design. But I incorporated them both together because I like the look of it. So I did little things like that, just made it a little bit my own. We are well into the inking phase now, where I'm basically doing my final versions of everything. It's a little bit more fluid because I can always go back and fix things even after I ink them. Like Mr. Freeze, I had some issues getting some of his joints right with the curvature of those rings, where I ink them and then I go back and then fix them later because I didn't really like how they looked. This was such a fun piece to work on. The character designs in Batman the Animated Series are so much fun. They're like almost the perfect versions of these characters. There's some things that I don't really love so much. Like, I think Catwoman's design is okay, not great. There's better versions out there. But everyone else has such a classy design to them. Like Mr. Freeze has this 1950s, like, B-movie spacesuit look that is just so great. the ventriloquist looks like, I don't know, I couldn't get this out of my head, but like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell with his hand up a mob puppet. I don't know, maybe I'm projecting. You'll see here I drew them on separate layers so I could draw Killer Croc behind him and get rid of the ventriloquist and Scarface so I can kind of see him better. Don't look too hard at Killer Croc. He'll fall apart under scrutiny, I think. But that's why he's in the back. All that's left is some fine details and some slight tweaks before I move on to the coloring. Laying down the flats, the most painful part of this process. I mean, it's great to see the colors first start appearing on them, but it is a pain to fill in all the colors. It's fun when you're shading, it's just how time consuming it is doing this little bit. You're lucky you get to watch it and fast forward. For the background, I'm just going for a mood. I wanted to do the background first, or at least an idea of the background first, so I could get a feeling of how to color the rest of them together. So I thought, well, the opening sequence of Batman the Animated Series, they got all the red skies and the black dark buildings, and I kind of wanted to do a gesture of that sort of thing. Make it atmospheric and moody sort of deal. Now we're on to all the hardcore coloring. I'm trying to keep the light source off to the left. If you see in the background of the drawing, I have a bunch of gestures of blimps in the background, like in the show. So I'm gonna have them lit by what I'm going to assume is one of those blimps. So there'll be a big light cast down from the left side. Batman the Animated Series was such a fantastic show. Not only was the writing top-notch, but the voice acting was just phenomenal. I can hear all of these characters' voices as I'm drawing them. They were so iconic and perfect. If I do another one of these, I definitely want to put, let's see, Riddler, Clayface, Two-Face, Phantasm. Who else is there? Mad Hatter. There's got to be a whole bunch of other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head that are such great characters too. Now we're finishing up with the final detailing. Just doing Killer Croc up, and then we're going to start working on some atmosphere and some final background details. And that'll about do it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me on my Batman the Animated Series Villains Rogues Gallery. It was a lot of fun to work on. I'll see you all next time. Have a great week. Goodbye.